evening and welcome to the Moving Home with Charlie weekly workshop with Charlie Lambden and guests. Live at 8 p.m. every Wednesday. This show is here to help all home movers of the UK be better prepared for dealing with the gauntlet that is trying to move home.
Helping make sure everyone has a home.
Whether you're buying, selling or both, it's a live show. So if you have a question about your move, pop it in the live chat. In the meantime, sit back, have a noisy slurp of your drink and enjoy the show.
Sorry, I can't resist it. Thank you, Tina B. Yes, I have just realised Yes. Welcome again this evening. I have to do another slurp now. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. Welcome back to another Wednesday weekly Movers Workshop every Wednesday at 8 o'clock with me, Charlie Lambden. This is Moving Home with Charlie. Tonight, we have a live Q&A with Simon David, who's the boss of Thomas Legal, a conveyancing law firm, who last week collected a whole armful, in fact, of awards, genuinely crowning them as the top of their industry. And first and foremost, if you've got live questions, please, questions for the live Q&A about conveyancing, anything you want to know about conveyancing, the process beforehand, during, after, why it's important, why it's not, how to pick a conveyancer, anything to do. And let's have some challenging ones. I think Simon finds it quite easy most of the time. He always says they're very easy questions. So let's see if we can't challenge him this evening. Before we do, quick reminder that for those of you who are members of the live Movers Q&A Club, the private Movers Q&A Club, at 9:30 we have our private video conference. You should all have had an email from me with a link to that. And if you haven't, and if you'd like to join that, you can join that. There's a link in the description below to join the private Movers Q&A Club, which is just a live video conference with me. It's unrecorded, it's private, and it's just private Q&A basically. But those of you who follow me on X and who've been watching me for the last few days, and by the way, X is where I do most of my market commentary about everything affecting the housing market. You'll notice that I've been posting what would appear to be a even more than usual amount of gloomier, doomy type posts about the state of the economy. And I said that I would give my reasons for that, and that's what I'm about to do. So my view has always been that for anyone who needs a home, provided you found a home that you want and you've had an offer accepted on it at an amount that you can afford without overpaying or overstretching yourself, never delay, never wait, always buy a home. So it's always buy now, but don't overpay. And overpaying is a subjective term, and it affects everyone differently based on your circumstances, not just your financial circumstances, but your life circumstances. And I think that the downturn that we are in various ways, which has been a sort of gradual downturn for the last 2 years, my current view is that it's going to get quite a lot worse in the next 2 years. And therefore, the risks of overpaying are, in my opinion, going to increase. And so extra caution should be applied. If you are in a position where you want to buy, but you're not in a hurry, I've had people saying, maybe I should wait. And my answer is just keep viewing, because whatever the market's doing, you have zero chance of finding a home that you want at a price that's acceptable to you if you're not out viewing. So don't stop viewing. But that brings me on to just a quick short summary of the overall sentiment in the housing market. And of course, this is a very broad generalization, and there are extreme exceptions to this at both ends. But we're in a very weird state of flux where, on the one hand, as I think Simon will talk about in a minute, there is a rush to get agreed deals through and over the line and exchanges done before the budget. On the other hand, the new inquiries for movers appear to be sitting on their hands and going, not going to do much new, not going to make any new commitments until we find out what's happening in the budget. We've got a lot of new properties coming to the market, according to the data that I've seen, according to Rightmove's data out this week. And bizarrely, on the one hand, it's busy in terms of getting deals over the line. On the other hand, the new deal pipeline, it's just weird out there. It's weird out there. And there are a lot of indicators, not in the housing market, but outside the housing market, in the jobs market, and weirdly in the classic cars market, that are really indicating that a lot of people, especially the white collar sector, are experiencing harder times than they have for a long time. Who knows what's going to happen in the budget, but that's roughly why. Okay, I'm seeing increasing signals of difficulties and hardship for increasing numbers of people. There are plenty of people unaffected doing absolutely fine, thank you very much, but the number of people struggling, I think, is creeping up a bit, and that's making things a bit tougher. Now, let's, without further ramble, bring Simon on. Good evening, Simon. Are you there? Hang on.
I think my sound is working, Charlie.
I'm sorry?
My sound is working, I hope. I just love
yes.
I love the beginning of that. I was just creasing up listening to you. Well, no, we couldn't listen to you because we couldn't hear you, but at least we can tell it's live. That's all I can
Yes,
say.
Exactly. Good evening and welcome back, and thank you for doing this. It's been a long time, actually. I think it's been like 6 months, or like April was the last time.
Yeah, I'm still getting over the last one. So, yeah, you can't have too much of a good thing when it comes to conveyancing.
Yes. Well, listen, I wanted to just share this. I saw this just posted a couple of hours ago on LinkedIn by an agent. Getting to the end of my tether, conveyancers seem to be more adversarial now than at any time in the past.
That's
so I thought that might be
kettle black, isn't it?
Well, I mean, there we are. It was ever thus, wasn't it? The sort of the atmosphere between conveyancers and estate agents. But I just thought it'd be interesting for you to comment on. I mean, I happen to know is a particularly good agent. He's a particularly forward-thinking professional and cooperative. He tries to work. He's a much better than average agent, but that was just one example. I've seen quite a few examples of that. I've just, I'd say, tensions rising in the pipeline, shall we say, in the agreed deals pipeline. There's a lot of tension at the moment. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think we're seeing it with clients, sadly, as well. There is frustration throughout the market. The time to get to the exchange of contracts when it's binding on everyone is taking much too much time. Agents want their commission, solicitors want the file off their desk, and more importantly, clients want to be in or out, as the case may be. So it is a real challenge, and there's lots and lots of factors affecting that. And it's really sad that it is becoming adversarial, because no one wants to be like that. An agent doesn't want to be screaming down the phone at a solicitor. A solicitor doesn't want to be screaming down the phone at an agent to stop hassling them, and they want to get on with the work, and clients aren't listening to them. And it's a really tough time, and I think there are various reasons for that. And I think one of the reasons which is that actually this market's as you were sort of saying too, it's a very odd market, and it's taken us all by a bit of surprise. We didn't think we were going to be in for a very busy year. The election was called early, much earlier than I think we thought. And we've been much busier than we thought we were going to be. And conveyancers, any decent conveyancer is probably struggling, if we're totally honest, with all the volume that's coming in. And there are 10% less conveyancers these days than there were, I think, 12 months ago. So you've got a busier market, you've got less people doing the work, and there's pressure on them from all sides to get these deals over the line.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, that would explain why perhaps there are some agents who are experiencing slightly tetchier, slightly shorter fuses on the conveyancing side. If you guys are stretched, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because Rightmove's figures out this week so that deals agreed, sales are significantly up on last year.
Yeah,
I think something like 17% up on last year, and that's good news, of course, isn't it? I mean, transactions up is good news. The total amount of property on the market though is going up is up now to a 10-year high.
That's right.
There's a lot
Yeah.
more choice.
There is, and actually, yeah, for a buyer, great. You've got lots more stuff to, you're not being forced into buying, the only property in the area you want to buy in on the market. There is, as you say, lots of choice, and that's a great thing. But as you said, it's a very odd market. We're waiting for the autumn statement. Everyone's worried about that for various reasons. You've got mortgage rates which have been coming down steadily, and now they're going back up. So we just don't. No one can call it. That's the problem. And so I sympathise with people saying, "Do we go now? Do we wait?" And as you said earlier, if you've got to move, you've got to move. But yeah, we're seeing a lot. We are seeing a waiting game.
Oh, so okay, that was going to be my next question, actually. So you are seeing a waiting game. So what you're seeing, people in chains just going a bit quiet and a bit slow to respond.
Yeah, yes, for various reasons. But then you've got the people that perhaps are selling second homes that have got to get the deal done before the autumn statement, because it is likely that tax will go up for second homeowners and for capital gains tax. And then you've got those other people who are thinking, well, I'll just wait, because actually that could be in my favour. So it's all over the place, and trying to manage all those expectations is a real challenge for us at the moment, as you can imagine.
I mean, at the best of times, there are multiple forces, aren't there? Multiple dynamics in the property transaction industry. There's so many things that affected politics, economics, interest rates, volumes. But there just seems to be a much larger than usual number of factors that are in an unusual position, an unusual situation. And so it's just a sort of swirling. It's impossible to see where it's going from here. I mean, the only thing that I would say is, I mean, on the one hand, people say I'm the most optimistic person they've ever met. On the other hand, they say I'm the gloomiest person they've ever met. The long-term macroeconomic fundamentals don't look good to me. And with the rumors that have been released about the budget, I'm not aware of anything that many people are going to consider to be good news coming in terms of the drip feed leaks that they do to the press about what they think they're going to be doing. They look like they're going to be battering small businesses. They're going to be battering. I mean, it's just, they're going to be finding all kinds of ways to put taxes up one way or another.
And things like the extra allowances for first-time buyers, they like to reduce. That may come to an end altogether. General stamp duty, which is at 250 at the moment before you start paying stamp duty, could go back to 125. So there's all. You're right. We don't perceive there's going to be anything good coming out of the statement, but we'll see.
We shall see. And the bond market's looking a bit worried, the way it's been behaving, which isn't good for the swaps market, which isn't good for the mortgage market, which isn't good for buyers' confidence. Right, let's a couple of questions to get started. So this is Abigail. Oopsie, hang on. Yes, this is Abigail on YouTube earlier on, who asked, number one, what can you do when you've chosen the right solicitor, but the buyer has chosen a slow one? So obviously Abigail's the seller, and there's a seller in a hurry. So I mean, I'll let you. What do you say to your clients when you've got selling clients and the buyer solicitors being quiet and unresponsive?
Well, I think again you've got to be a little bit careful, because it may not be the solicitor at all. Yes, it could be, as we talked about earlier. You could have a solicitor that's slow with work and they just can't get through the work, and that is a perennial problem. But the solicitor might be peddling slowly because they've been told to peddle slowly by their client. It could be that the buying client hasn't actually given all their solicitor all the information they're supposed to. They haven't given them their identity documentation. They haven't gone through the funding arrangements, and that can take some time if it's complicated, source of wealth and source of funds. So that might be a problem. And this is so that's one thing to think about. So I'll just be a little bit careful about saying the solicitor is slow, because there could be a variety of reasons for that. But if you have got that situation, you've got an estate agent that you're paying a lot of money for to do this deal for you, and I get them involved because they can obviously speak directly to your buyer and say, look, you've got a solicitor who really doesn't seem to be performing, and that agent may have a good relationship with that solicitor, may be able to say, look, you guys, you've got to sort this out because it's causing a problem. You could think about giving a deadline. That could be risky in this market. If you're going to give a deadline, you need to stick to it. So that could be something you want to think about. And I think I said on one of these before, is that if you can speak to your buyer directly, that can be really powerful. You know, if you can get on a really personal level with them, and I've always done this, any property deal I've ever done, I've always tried to speak directly, and even done the deal directly if I can sometimes. And I've done that actually with my last house sale. Is you can, if you can form a relationship with your buyer, you can then say, look, we're all on the same page here. And you can take it from a very personal angle. So I really encourage you could do that if you're comfortable with doing it, of course.
Okay. Actually, that reminds me of a question that I received on a live stream, I think on Monday evening, which was from a buyer saying, it's now 4 weeks since the offer was accepted and my solicitor still hasn't been sent the paperwork they're expecting from the seller's solicitor. What should I do? And I mean, obviously, I've got no idea what the seller's situation is, but it's a bit more surprising, isn't it, when a seller's solicitor is slow, because you'd imagine that the seller's already ready and wanting to sell. But I wonder what your answer to that question would have been if you were acting for a buyer and you were getting tumbleweed from the seller's side.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope there's not a sort of, they're not trying to play you off against someone else in the background. And that could be a worry, of course, and that does happen. Yes, I think it's the same scenario. Is there a reason behind the scenes that we don't know about? Are they struggling to get ID over to their solicitor? Is a solicitor snowed with work again? But yeah, 4 weeks is a long time. I mean, in this day and age, onboarding a client can be in minutes. Once they've got that, they can download, the seller solicitor can download the document, the deeds from the land registry, so they can get an electronic copy within minutes, put that together in a contract. You know, we're not talking weeks, we're talking hours, you know, with decent solicitors. Yeah. And this is something, again, that you and I have talked about on numerous occasions from a seller's point of view. Get your solicitor instructed at the time you put your property on the market. Go do all the ID, get all that sorted, so that hopefully day one, the agent instructs the solicitor, and then the seller's solicitor gets the contract out immediately.
Yeah,
exactly
right. It bears repeating that, actually, just straight away, for any sellers watching this. I always recommend choosing and signing up with your conveyancer before you choose your agent, for several reasons. I won't go into them right now, but it definitely is worthwhile doing that. And same with buyers. As soon as you think you're about to get, if you're going to go do a second viewing on a property because you think you're going to offer on it, that's the time to make sure you've got a conveyancer lined up already. Because if you make your offer with a conveyancer already appointed, you're going to look like you're more proceedable and more serious than other buyers who don't have that. So, Simon, we've got a handful of questions coming in now from the live chat. Just before we start with those, I said to that, my answer to that buyer was, there are also some sellers who sometimes, when they've been on the market for a while and then suddenly have an offer and they realize that they've got to move house, they haven't got somewhere to move to. And they end up looking to move, and then they actually start to go, oh, this isn't, maybe we weren't as committed to moving as we thought. And they have second thoughts, and then they back out, but they don't want to say they're backing out because they feel a bit silly about it, and so they just go quiet. And there's a lot of that on both buyers and sellers, where you get the sort of deal remorse, which is a deal's been agreed, yay, and you wake up the next day and going, why don't I feel excited about this? Or
they're pedaling slowly to find a house.
So what my advice to that buyer was, work out what you think your time limit for this is. Ask the agent, the seller's agent, and say, look, how long does the seller need to move out by? Could they let me know how long they'd like? And see, if you can we agree a time frame on this, because I'm not going to wait forever. It's been a month, we still haven't got paperwork. And so if the seller's getting cold feet, you want to know, don't you, as a buyer? You don't want to sit there waiting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So cool. Okay, I've got another question lined up, but let's go for the live ones first. So Georgina Clark, who is the first person to put a question in the live stream tonight, says, my vendor's solicitor. So Georgina, you must be the
same one you just said.
Oh my goodness. Okay, yes, it is. It was Georgina who asked the question earlier, and I told her to ask it this evening. Sorry.
You're doing well
Okay,
tonight,
there we
aren't
are.
you?
We've
You've had
asked that one already. So
couple of
thank
senior
you.
moments here, Charlie.
Yes. Okay, Leo Lease on YouTube says, question, if a tenant is refusing to leave a property you're purchasing, landlord is taking legal action, how long could this take? Minimum, maximum?
Oh dear, that's a horrible question. Wow. Minimum, well, the landlord has to serve, let's assume that the tenants have gone through their initial period under the tenancy. Let's say that they're going to rent it initially for 6 months or a year. So they've gone past that period. And then in general terms, it becomes a periodic tenancy, which means that they can give the landlord 4 weeks notice, and then the landlord has to give them 2 months notice. So minimum 2 months, as long as the landlord served them correct notice on the correct day, etc., etc. However, if they don't want to go, the landlord has then got to try and evict them, and that can take months. The problem you've got is that the courts are way behind with everything, still catching up from COVID. So it could be months. It literally could be months. I couldn't put a time scale on it. And the tenants could be very clever. They could seek relief from the court. I have a friend of mine who rents property that is his income. I think it took him about 8 to 9 months to get these particular tenants out, and then of course they trashed the place as well. So not only are you looking to buy a property and you may have been around it when the tenant's there and think, oh, this is lovely, the tenant moves out, trash the place, you've got another problem on your hands because it's not the property you viewed and not the property you think you were going to be buying. Big problem. Yeah. But you can understand it from the landlord's point of view, because what the landlord doesn't want to do, they put the property on the market, they want to sell it. If they serve notice on the tenant, get the tenants out, they could be waiting 3, 4, 5 months before the actual completion of the sale, and they're losing that income. So they hope, what they do is they hope that the tenant's going to go, but occasionally tenants don't go.
Leo, if you're still watching this now, it'd be lovely to know, is that your situation? Have you actually offered on a property that's got a tenant in it, or are you thinking about it? Because that would be really interesting to know your situation there. Yeah. Right. Thank you for that question. Next up, we've got James Roberts on YouTube, who says, we are in a relatively simple 3-property chain, all being sold to the same agent. We are 4 weeks in so far. Roughly how long would you expect until completion?
I hear that word simple. I hear that word simple so many times in my life. It's a very simple transaction. It's never simple, not when you've got people involved and agents and solicitors, sadly. And what's simple? Is it freehold? Is it leasehold? Is there a house? Is it a deceased estate? Is there a mortgage involved? Are there 2 mortgages involved? And we can have a fight over when we're going to move. So yeah, I hope it is a simple transaction for you, James. I really do. But inevitably, these things don't turn out to be simple. In general terms, the time to get to completion, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, I think we're rolling at around 140 days now. So you can work back from there. It's still taking much too long to get these transactions over the line. Sadly, you could be in it for another, well, what we're looking at, another 12 weeks or so, something like that. But it's, yeah. I think the good thing is what you have got on your side, you've got the same agent so the agent's got 3 deals. The agent is going to want to get this deal through because he's going to get some nice bit of commission. So the agent's in control of that deal, and that's really good. And I think the agent will, hopefully, if they're a good agent, will be very proactive and make sure that you're all kept up to date, kept informed about how everyone is fixed in that chain.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. So whatever complications do arise, the fact that it's the same agent handling all the sales is an advantage, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Because some agents, again, may be giving different information, may not be very good at checking the chain situation, don't really think it's their job. But if you've got one agent on all the properties, then that's a massive plus.
Yeah. But as you said, there are so many, even in what is ostensibly a simple transaction, there are still things like, well, the lender's valuation might come along and be different, and that can upset a chain.
Yeah.
But yeah, fingers crossed for you, James.
Yes,
Stacey asks, why are there less conveyancers in the market?
Because it's a really, really tough job, Stacey, and I don't say that lightly. We had a stamp duty holiday. We had 2 stamp duty holidays, if you remember, back in 21, because after COVID, was it 21, 22? The years have gone by. But we had 2 holidays, and the market went bonkers. And those poor conveyancers, and I do say poor conveyancers because they were up to their eyes in work. And it never really, I mean, the market went quieter. Yeah, it did go a little bit quieter, but they've never really been able to come off the gas and take a break. And I think for a lot of people, particularly those solicitors that weren't particularly well supported by their firms, they didn't manage their workloads, have just burnt out and have thought, I don't want to do this any longer. So that's one reason. And the other reason is because conveyancing is a high risk area as far as insurance is concerned. So we have to have professional indemnity insurance, which means that if we make an error, then our insurers pay out. And that insurance is very, very expensive. And the problem is, if you don't do this seriously, if conveyancing is only a small part of what you do as a solicitor, your indemnity insurance premiums have gone up. So if you're a bit of a dabbler in conveyancing, you probably can't afford to do it, or you'll drop it. You'll think, well, there's other areas of law that I can do which are more profitable and cost me less from an insurance point of view. So that's another big reason. The dabblers are leaving, and that's a good thing in a way, because it means that people are left in conveyancing are very, very serious about what they do. But the indemnity insurance cost, I mean, it's eye-watering. I have a couple of firms, as you know, Charlie. We are paying in the region of nearly £500,000 a year just in indemnity insurance.
Nearly £500,000 a year as an insurance premium.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's expensive. Now that's based on your turnover and based on the size of your firm. And I've got 2 quite large firms, but this is expensive. This is an expensive part of your business. So
do they do nice no claims bonuses for you like they're doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you do get a benefit every year. We don't have, touch wood, we're free of claims, and that's great. But if you have 1 or 2 large claims, then your indemnity insurance for the next year will go up. So, and the problem is you've got less insurers in the market because it's such a high risk area. So you've got a bit of a double whammy, really.
Wow. Yeah.
That's why I'm so grey.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster for years, hasn't it? Now we've got a question here from a chap who's never told me exactly how I'm supposed to pronounce this, but it's spelled Rugob.
Rugob, okay.
Who says, what if you choose your conveyancer? So I think this is saying, as a buyer, because I was recommending having your conveyancer appointed before you offer. What if you choose your conveyancer, etc., and then the sale falls through? I don't think most buyers have this in place before viewing and buying. So Rugob, you're correct. Most buyers don't have the conveyancer in place before buying and offering, which in my mind gives them 2 immediate disadvantages. Number one, they're more likely to get sucked into the panel conveyancers of a large agent, which is not necessarily the right conveyancer for you in that situation. You're not necessarily going to get the best quality conveyancing that you should, which could put if you end up with a poor quality conveyancer, puts your purchase at risk. And secondly, you're disadvantaged against other buyers if you haven't got a conveyancer in place, because a buyer that does have it in place is going to be a more attractive offer. But the question is what if the sale falls through? So I think that what he's asking is, he or she, I've got no idea who this is if I've gone through the motion and the cost and the expense and the process and the time of signing up with the conveyancer, and then it goes through, what happens if the deal doesn't get accepted?
What, from a monetary point of view?
Yeah.
Or
yes,
I mean, it'll depend on the conveyancer, but if they've done work on your behalf, then they will charge you a percentage of the cost depending on how far they've got. Now, if it's
Yeah.
very early in the transaction, then the likely your bill isn't going to be very much. If they've got right to the point where they've got to do exchange of contracts and that falls through, and that's where it becomes binding, then it is likely you're going to have to pay maybe 80% of the fee that they had originally quoted to you, and which is right, because they've done all this work. It is a silly system that you get no certainty for weeks and weeks and weeks, which comes back to exactly your point, Charlie. If you get your conveyancer early, get it all sorted early, you get the deal through quicker, it's less likely to fall through.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure. He may have been also asking about if you get your conveyancer lined up and your offer isn't accepted, well, you're just ready to proceed when you do have an offer accepted, right?
Exactly.
You're not going to lose money because an offer isn't accepted, are you?
Yeah, if you're genuine, yeah, absolutely right. No, you're not going to lose any money from that point of view. Your solicitor's done all the work, and that work is the same for any property you buy.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you were going to buy it 200,000, then suddenly going to buy it 500,000.
Yeah.
There's obviously more work involved because they won't have got the funding for that. But yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But if you've just done the onboard, so you've just done the ID checks and the proof that the approval of the source of funds, and you've had a conveyancer who's accepted you as a client and is willing to act for you, that process doesn't cost you more each time you offer, does it? That's one and done.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Great. Chen Gutu asks, is there anything as a seller or buyer that we do that could slow down the conveyancing process? I think he's like, are we the movers making mistakes that slow the process down? I think that's what the question means.
Well, the early onboarding we've talked about, that the early onboarding, either as a buyer or seller, that does slow it down, and we proved that when we did a pilot with a very big firm of estate agents last year, and early onboarding of a seller client was taking about 50 days off the transaction time. So yes, there's absolutely that does slow it down. If we hadn't, it makes a huge difference on turnaround time. So that's one thing. The biggest problem that we have on a buyer's point of view is getting your funding clear and getting it to your solicitor in a timely manner. And when you try and be evasive, or you say, "Oh, it doesn't really matter where this 5,000 came from," or "I'll just try and fudge it with a solicitor," that's going to slow the process down, because funding is the most crucial part. It's the most dangerous part of our due diligence on a client, and we are going to get that right. And I make no bones about that. So that's my experience. Buyers slow the deal down, not on purpose. It's just that they're not organized. And lots of people these days, particularly first-time buyers, have gifts from parents, and then parents have to be ID'd, and we have to get the funding arrangements from the parents, evidence the funding, and that slows the process as well. So that's a big part of it, I think.
Which is another reason. I mean, that's a great point you make. Is that a lot of first-time buyers, especially, are using gifted money from parents as their deposit, aren't they? And that another reason why it's worth getting that done up front. You've got to get your funds approved up front. Yeah.
And just from a seller's point of view, we often find, for example, if they've done an extension, they haven't got the paperwork relating to that, and they've forgotten that actually they need to get the building inspector out to finally sign off the works. They've forgotten about it. It's a very, very common thing to do. That can take a few weeks to sort out. So paperwork, it's all about the paperwork at the end of the day. And sorting your mortgage out, that's another thing.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, Mark Reynolds Corden on YouTube says, how early should I sign up with a conveyancer? Am I wasting their time if my property is not yet on the market and looking to offer in the next 6-ish months?
Yeah, I think you're a bit early. I think I'd be saying at the time you get the property valued, bearing in mind that depending on where you are in the country, properties can take up to 8, 12, 18 weeks, I don't know, to sell. So you really want to be looking at it, I would suggest, at the time that you decide to put it on the market. It doesn't take that long to get the onboarding sorted. So I would think that's when you start looking at it, when you're probably.
What I always recommend to sellers is that actually choose your conveyancer and appoint them just before you choose your agent, because you will get more favorable terms from an agent. Yeah.
Yeah. So valuation stage, because you're going to get 2 or 3 valuations, aren't you? So yeah, get your conveyancer on board then.
And it's one of the few things as a seller that you can do that would genuinely help you if you're trying to negotiate the agent's fee down. Because you're demonstrating a much higher level of commitment as a seller. You're also making their job easier to sell your property, especially if you are contract ready, right? If you come to an agent and say, I'm contract ready, I've done all the conveyancing paperwork, I just now need an agent that can sell it quickly. They're going to be, they'll be fighting over each other to get your business. And it doesn't cost you any extra to be ready in advance. That's the point. It costs you no extra money to get the paperwork ready before you go onto the market. But I agree. There's no point doing 6 months in advance. But when you want it to go on the market, have the paperwork done first, or at the time that it's going to the market. Stacey is back again with a question saying, as a buyer, if I want to renegotiate the offer price, do I go through my solicitor or do this directly with the estate agent?
So your solicitor deals with legal aspects, but your estate agent deals with negotiations. So it should go through the estate agent. The other thing I always say is through a solicitor, it gets lost in translation, because a solicitor is just going to ring the other one or probably email them and say, my client wants to reduce the price because we haven't got planning on your extension. It's not really very persuasive. Whereas the agent is probably going to turn around, is going to ring the client and say, look, Mr. Seller client, we've got some problems on your property. This is likely to come up again. The buyer wants to renegotiate. It's, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's a much more persuasive argument. So no, always go through the estate agent. The solicitor will obviously, you'll need to confirm it with the solicitor, but estate agent first, please.
Okay, questions are coming in thick and fast now.
Sorry, just also on that point, if you do renegotiate the offer and you're getting a mortgage, your solicitor will have to tell the mortgage company, and then the mortgage company will then have to potentially issue a new mortgage offer. So that will slow you up as well.
Yeah. Okay, that one's not a question, so I'm going to skip that one. Leo Lease, who were asking us earlier about the landlord selling property with a tenant in it, said, so you're at the situation where offer accepted, gone through conveyancing with Thomas Legal. Okay, you got a client there.
Okay.
Paid for search practice, got structural survey, all clear. Tenants won't leave. Landlord's gone for a possession order.
Yeah. So that's the eviction order. And sad thing is, poor old Leo Lease has obviously paid quite a lot of money for a structural survey. That is not cheap, regardless of how big or small the property is. So that's a really frustrating position to be in. So he or she is either going to have to sit there and wait until the possession order is granted and the actual tenants are out, or sadly look for another property and try, if they can, to sell the survey back to the seller, maybe.
Right.
Or
How frustrating. How frustrating.
Yeah, it's just
Fingers crossed. I hope that speeds up for you, Leo.
Yeah.
Samir Malal says, question, can the seller not declare Japanese knotweed? We just found out about it 2 months late. Got 10 years guarantee. Is that good enough? Will the bank still lend? Okay,
so I think it's worth pointing out what Japanese knotweed is. Japanese knotweed is this horrible invasive plant, which it spreads, and if you very rapidly, and can cause problems from a structural point of view. And if you try and pull it out, it just sort of comes back in, even worse. And I think particularly London, where you've got small gardens, it can spread very easily, garden to garden. And until relatively recently, you couldn't get a mortgage if there was Japanese knotweed discovered. But nowadays, there are these firms that have been formed that can manage it and get rid of it for you. But it still can take 5-10 years to sort it. And they provide an insurance policy. So can the seller not declare Japanese knotweed? So that's an interesting one. Do they actually know whether there was Japanese knotweed? Have they lied in their forms and said there wasn't? Do they genuinely not know? And have they, even if they've ticked not known, have they actually made enough effort to see what it looks like and actually go into their garden and say, I don't know, that might be or might not, and look it up? So there's a question there about misrepresentation. We just found out about it 2 months late and got a 10-year warranty guarantee. Is that good enough? I'm assuming from that the deal's still going through. I'm not sure. If it's 2 months after you've moved in and you can prove that the seller knew about it and didn't tell you, then you've got a potential claim against them because they've misrepresented the position to you. but I think probably the question says, will the bank still lend? Leads me to think that the deal's still going through. So will the bank still lend? It'll depend on the bank, on the mortgage lender. If they know that there's a warranty and some sort of management scheme in place to get rid of the knotweed, some lenders will, some lenders won't.
Okay, thanks for that one. So Tina B said, I'm 17 weeks in, just ready to exchange as a chain-free first-time buyer buying an empty house. Slow vendors. 17 weeks. That's frustrating for a chain-free purchase, isn't it?
Yeah.
This might be a bit too technical and niche. In fact, I will skip that.
I thought you were going to give me some challenging ones. That was
okay. Fine, you asked for it.
Well,
Dolov FM says, any advice regarding placing the proceeds of a property sale straight into a trust? Would money laundering regs require a bank account first? I think it's a very niche, specific question from one person. But
well, I can just answer very briefly. It doesn't matter if the property is owned in a trust or by trustees, or if it's owned in an individual's name. The solicitor will only pay the money into the account that is either a trust account or an individual's account. They're not going to put it into some random person's account. So and then we can't act as bank. So we'll always only ever pay the money into our client's account, and that could be a trust or it could be an individual.
Okay, thank you. Emma Metcalf asks, is that why I'm paying nearly £2,000 for conveyancing? I think she's referring to the insurance premium. Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, Emma, that absolutely is part of it. But I think the other thing is you're paying for a highly skilled person to check the property you're buying and make sure it is compliant. And it's not going to cause you any problems when you move in. And in fact, most importantly, when you sell it. And the other thing they're doing is they're not only acting for you, but in most cases, they're acting for the mortgage lender as well. So they've got, all these responsibilities, and they're having to advise you on lots and lots of different aspects of this transaction. So these people are highly skilled, and clearly highly skilled people are paid well. And that there's no denying that. If you're paying £500 for a conveyancing process, well, good luck to you, because you will not be getting the technical skill that I would expect you to be receiving. It's just, what do we say? You pay cheap, you pay cheap, buy twice, or buy twice, pay cheap, whatever it is. Yeah.
Buy twice, but buy cheap, buy twice. Pay peanuts, get monkeys. Absolutely. Yeah. You're not going to be getting someone at that price who's going to be actually going out of their way to make sure you've got the advice that you need, specific to you and your property. Leah Lease has said, I'm going to hang in there. It gives me more time to save an emergency fund. So she's going to hold on for that tenant.
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
That's good. Carlos says, question, how soon should I get my conveyancing as a first-time buyer sorted if I'm looking to buy sometime next year? Is there a time frame to complete, or exit fees payable should this not be met? I think actually we covered that earlier, didn't we?
I think so. I mean, if you are appointing a solicitor, the chances are, if you're only looking till next year, they're going to have to revisit it again. All the funding and everything is too long. So even if you give them evidence of your funding and how you've acquired those funds, they're going to have to check it all again. So you're too early. And if you do it now, if you want to do it now, you by all means, but they're going to charge you for the work. So I think you're better doing it a bit nearer the time. I think
the timing is, not many people offer on a property after the first viewing. Most people will do a second viewing because it's a big decision. If you find yourself wanting to book a second viewing, that's the time that I'd want to make sure I have my conveyancer ready. If you're anticipating offering, have your conveyancer ready just before that. Okay. So, I think that if you are confident you're going to be offering soon, because there's plenty of property in the market, and it's just a question of picking the one that you want, then having your conveyance lined up, even when you're viewing, will get you taken more seriously by agents, and they'll roll the red carpet out again. Yeah, but that is if you're expecting to be offering within the next few weeks or something.
Yeah.
But if it's much longer than that, then it can take, if you want to do it at leisure, it can take a good 2 or 3 weeks, can't it, to get all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, to get someone actually onboarded and ID checked and AML checked and stuff. Right. Last question, and then we've got Mr. Stig waiting in the wings. The last question here is OM. About to complete on a property with a rent charge, with historic rent charges, and there is no record of the rent being paid for over 80 years. Is there a way for the rent charge to be removed?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one. What I can tell you is that you can get indemnity insurance for rent charges not being paid. I think I'm right in saying that they could only go back 6 years anyway, if they did want to try and claim the rent charges. There is, yes, I'm sure there is a way of extinguishing. I'd have to come back on that one, I'm afraid. But yeah, rent charges actually are very big. There's a huge subject around rent charges, but you get indemnity insurance. Rent charges are usually pretty tiny anyway, historic rent charges, and get insurance. It'll be peanuts. It'll be a one-off premium. Get the seller to pay for it. Yeah, not an issue.
Okay. Absolutely very final question, because actually this is someone that tried to ask earlier on. Angie R says, how should you approach things with a poor solicitor on the seller's side? They say they've done things like an LPE1 form, but they do it weeks or months later.
Yeah, sadly, you do get poor solicitors, and if they're giving incorrect information, that's just not acceptable. You know, I understand if you're delayed because you've got so much work on, but you've got to be upfront about it. Don't lie about it as a solicitor. That's ridiculous. I think you've just got to try and get the agent on board, as I said, or try and reach out to the seller directly, and say, look, I'm trying to buy your house, but your solicitor is just not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But again, if they're saying they've done things, is it the seller that's giving them information or not giving them information they should be? So it could be the seller at fault. So the poor solicitor may be the poor old solicitor who is still trying to take instruction from their client, and the client's going pedal slowly.
Well, Simon, thank you very much. I'd also like to congratulate you on your massive haul of awards, the SS Awards. That's fantastic news. Congratulations and well done.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah,
it is, because what people don't know about that is that is voted for by customers. It's where, because I'm very familiar with the SS Awards. I've sponsored it in the past, and I've had clients who've gone in there for it. And for movers, they won't have heard of it. It's behind the scenes awards in the moving industry. And what's good about it is, for whether it's solicitors or estate agents entering, the award organizers send the questions out to the estate agents or lawyers' customer database, and the results are based on their customers' answers. So I mean, I'm thrilled to be, it makes me super happy as well, because we work together, and because you work for all of my followers who end up choosing you, like Leo. Guys, if you would like to, if you are, especially if you're thinking of selling, coming to the market, get contract ready. I promise you, you will sell faster for more money than if you don't get contract ready. I absolutely guarantee it. It's like almost 100% certain that you will sell faster and for more money if you come to the market contract ready and choose a good agent who knows how to use that to their advantage. So please do that. And if you want to talk to Simon's team, that's the URL. I think it's also linked in the description below, or on my homepage, you'll find a link to it. But before you go, let's just... Alex, you there?
Hello, Charlie.
Evening. How you doing?
Yeah, well, thanks, mate. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So right at the beginning, we were Simon and I were just talking about the effects of the budget is already having on the property market, with a lot of sellers, especially trying to get their sale exchanged before. Actually, Simon, I was going to ask you about that. Do you reckon if they like a capital gains tax change, would that come into effect immediately? Do you think, or
who knows?
Who knows exactly? I mean, if they wait till April, look at the rush that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it'll be like the Myris when that was announced early back in the late 80s, except in reverse.
Yeah, and you'll get first-time buyers if they reduce that, because it's going to make a huge difference. That could be £2,500 for each first-time buyer to be worse off. Yeah,
the other increase on the stamp duty.
Yeah, and the other thing that's happening is that a lot of people are, for example, if it's a husband and wife or a couple that own, so you got one that owns a property and they want to put it in joint names, they're doing that now again for capital gains reasons. So we are swamped with those sorts of transactions, not necessarily sales and purchases, but someone saying, I've got to get this property into joint names because I need to make sure there's no capital gains tax payable or
I want to use the allowance across both parties.
Yeah.
Does that rely on the land registry updating stuff in time? Because good luck with that.
No, unfortunately not.
No, thank God. Just got to get the document. You should get the document dated. That's the important thing.
Yeah. Right. Otherwise, you'd be waiting till 26 for some of those.
Yes. Yeah.
I,
We wait
I,
3
I
years for a new lease to be registered, something like that.
Is it that long now? Jesus.
So can be. Yeah.
I was having a conversation yesterday with a tech entrepreneur and investor who's who I'm hoping that we're going to work with, who deals directly with the land registry. And his comments were, I mean, they were utterly depressing. He said, they don't care. They just don't care. So, we're trying to do digitization, this kind of stuff, get them to use the UPRN and everything else. And he's like, they literally can go, we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
There's it's like no one there. It's yeah. And
Well, you're right. I mean, the digitization is a massive challenge for the land registry because they are having to digitize local authority records, most of which are on microfiche. And they've got a little way through it. There's something like 350 local authorities. It is going to cost them millions to do it, and it's going to take them years and years. So we got no hope of this process being speeded up if we can't get to a digital age, and that is going to take years for the land registry department.
Simon, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure.
I hope to have you back on the channel again much sooner than 6 months. Hopefully in a month or two. Especially if anything comes out of the budget that actually affects on the legal side of transactions. Maybe sooner rather than later.
Great. And good to meet you, Simon, however briefly.
Nice to meet you too.
Hopefully we can meet in real life, the three of us at some point.
Oh, that's too dangerous. That's too dangerous.
Well, I'm going to be in London next week. I'm going to be in person with Stiggy next Wednesday in London. Okay. Simon, I don't know if you're going to be in London, but give us a shout.
No, I think I'm in Sierra Leone, so no.
Much safer.
All right. Cheers, Simon. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And Rich Cook, thank you very much. Thank you for the beer token. Much appreciated. Really appreciate that. I'm always happy to hear that we've helped in any way at all. So, Alex.
Yes, mate.
I don't even know where to begin, actually. I just have this sense of foreboding.
Yeah, well, we had a chat about it last night. Yes, it's scary as hell. I mean, just the conversation we just had briefly there. If these changes come into effect, whichever ones they are, but if they come into effect, and it's all speculation right now, when the announcement is made, that's one thing. I mean, they may be terrible, and by the sounds of the speculation, they are going to be terrible. But if they do a Lawson and wait until April to implement these things, I mean, the stamp duty, which is April, combine that with the capital gains tax, if that's pushed till April, and the market will erupt. There will be people selling like mad, people buying like mad, first-time buyers trying to find somewhere where they can save on the stamp duty, landlords trying to sell so they can avoid the capital gains. It'll be pandemonium for the next X months. So I guess we can gauge exactly how insane Rachel Reeves is by when these new changes come into effect.
Well, I think insanity would be a sort of an explanation that one might have some sympathy for if that was the case. My assessment, and people ask me sometimes on X, they say, who the hell are you, Charlie, to judge anyone on this kind of thing? And what it boils down to is when you've been an employer as long as I have, and I've been an employer for 30 years, and I've directly employed well over 500 people in that time. And you simply build up experience. You start to learn about people who deliver and people who don't. And you start to recognize lots of different personality types. And I've had the range of, at one stage we had a company with offices in 3 countries. We were 120 staff. That's a small business on the world stage. Mm-hmm. I get that, but I was in my 30s at that point.
Yeah, it's a lot of management.
It was a lot, and so I hired and I experienced politics, like the bad kind of corporate politics. I experienced, I saw firsthand people who'd come from large institutions or corporations who presented immaculately at interview, fooled me, completely fooled me. Right?
Yeah, but couldn't deliver in that environment because they weren't supported by 27 levels of other staff.
Not just that. When they realized within 1 or 2 weeks that they fell flat on their face and didn't actually know what they were doing or how to operate in that environment, rather than going, oh God, I'm going to need some help. I got to figure this out. I've got some things I wasn't expecting. This is unknown environment for me. How do I adjust to this? Rather than just going, ow, wow, I had one guy actually, he came from Rightmove. He was one of Rightmove's top salespeople. And he fell flat on his face, but he had the decency to come to me and say, Charlie, I've got this really wrong, mate, and I'm sorry I've let you down. So, I think it's probably best if I move on. And I thought, I
respect that. Yeah.
I totally respected that. And here was his words. He said, I've fallen flat on my face. I don't know why. I thought I was going to be able to do this job and I can't, and I'm really sorry. But he was the only one. I had people from Zoopla. I had people who come from big accounting firms. All this experience and expertise I was hiring, big names on the CV. And then I witnessed this utter void of competence, skill, judgment, or decency.
Yeah.
And so I've learned to recognize the signs, and it's not even always intentional on their part, right? They've just come from environments where they fucking blagged it for a while and got away with it. But in a smaller business environment, that doesn't work.
No.
You get flushed out really quickly, like, oh dear, you don't know what you're doing, do you? And so, that's why what I see as the Labour cabinet as a whole. And by the way, there are individuals there who I have higher regard for than others, but looking at them collectively as a whole, I do not see a single person with a level of experience, real world experience that actually is going to be of value. They are, as a cabinet, I see them as out of their depth because they don't understand the concepts they're managing, let alone the realities of it. And I'm terrified
that's the key. Is understanding. It's not just a lack of experience. You can understand something without experience, but they're showing that they are either callous or they just don't understand what it is they've been asked to do. Now, again, it's speculation. We haven't seen the budget, but everything that's being reported doesn't fill you with a lot of hope.
It's they don't understand. When you've I despair when I see people saying you don't need business experience to run a government. I just despair of people who think that.
Agreed.
Because it is no different. You have customers paying you money, in this case, the taxpayer, and you are there to deliver a service for that customer. Mm-hmm. And the government's job is to use our money, because that's the only money they get, is our money to make our country safe and prosperous.
Well, they are making it very safe for public sector pensions. I mean, that you don't mind about that.
Well, I mean, that's almost like overtly. I think even they understand that what we're doing here is making a very unfair deal, unfairly good for the public sector and unfairly bad for the private sector. But what I mean about, I'm worried about the unintended consequences. Because they don't understand what they're doing. Yeah. They don't understand the mechanics and the dynamics of government and assets and the return on investment for their spending decisions, and that they just don't get it. They all come from a background of, we don't know where the money comes from. It's just there because we've spent our entire life in institutions of some kind, non-commercial institutions of some kind, where there's just always money.
Yep.
And so they don't understand the concept of margins and productivity. They use the word productivity a lot, but they don't know what it fucking means.
Charlie,
literally don't know what it means.
I've spent the last 4 or 5 years working with life science, biotech sort of startups. And they are normally founded by some very intelligent scientists who think they've hit upon an idea. They get some seed funding. And then as the company grows and they go through some rounds of finance raising, they'll bring in professional managers and the company will explode from 10 people to 150, 200 people in the space of a year or two. And what you find every time, the biggest argument is always, that's great. but it's not commercial. If the treatment's going to cost £4 million to reproduce, it's not commercial. We can't possibly go with that. And the scientists look at you, but it's groundbreaking. It's wonderful. And I can understand that in science. That's not a problem. When it's government and the money is not coming from private equity, it's coming from our tax or from ever-growing public debt, it's not a good thing to not understand that something has to be commercially viable.
It's so important to understand it, because put in simpler terms, because so many people don't understand it. So they just think government money, and the numbers are only ever spoken about in billions, and that is outside the scope of comprehension for most people who are earning, the median salary.
Well, even if you're a politician earning 150, or in the cabinet, I think, what is it, 150,000, something like that in the cabinet now? 150,000 versus 150 billion, hard for even them to comprehend.
But when you've had to run an organization, whether you got 5 staff or 50 staff or 500 staff, and you must have enough money for payroll every month.
Yes, you understand it very well. Cash flow becomes important,
and that's what these guys don't get. Oh, and what the hell with that GDP? What was it? The debt tweak.
Gotta love it.
34 billion tweak.
Imaginary
numbers. I mean, they just it's literally like someone's just gone, my credit card balance, or even better, my mortgage balance. I don't think I owe that much. I'm going to take 34 billion off it. That's how much I owe now. And everyone's just gone, that's probably fine.
Well, we've recalculated it. It's fine. We just knocked down a conservatory. You'll be all right.
And to me, it's equally mind-blowing that they've done that without a really clear, maybe there is a really clear calculation explanation for it, but I've just seen it's been revised estimates. And what's estimate a word for?
Yeah.
Right.
To be fair, that we can't just hand this to the Labour government. The Tories have done the same thing. We recalculate GDP, we recalculate public debt. Happens all the bloody time. But to do it right now, when she's looking for overhead, against fiscal rules as she's about to announce a budget, is a little suspicious that they just suddenly managed to magic up 34 billion.
Profound familiarity makes a salient point. Most of the government, unironically, doesn't consider the public to be their customers. They consider their clients to be the next level up internally.
Yeah, well, yes, of course. Yeah. They're pleasing their bosses. But at the end, the cabinet ought to be thinking about their customers. Yeah.
But actually, so what I am more worried about than any of these things is I'm worried about what I see. If my waters are right, if the feeling in my bones is right, and that's all it is, right? Is the feeling in my bones is that there's some sort of earthquake coming as a result of the budget. And it might be a minor earthquake, just a bit of a tremor, no damage, no injuries, but still, a tremor that gets everyone on edge. Like, oh my God, is the room shaking? Or it might be a bit worse than that, and there might be a few bits of loose masonry that fall off.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a masonry scenario coming.
Yeah, and a few innocent bystanders below get hit on the head with a brick.
When we say a bit of masonry, I'm imagining a little like Pompeii.
Right. Okay. Or it could be up to 6 or 7 on the Richter scale, and it starts bringing some buildings down, metaphorically. I just don't know. And within a week of the budget, we've got the US election as well.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Which should be unrelated, because there are large numbers of Labour staffers over in the States right now campaigning for the Democrats.
Yep.
What the hell? I don't know. I have no rational explanation for this. I just find myself feeling like we should be preparing for an earthquake that hopefully will be quite small.
Yeah. Well, have Israel attacked Iran yet, or is that still a rumor?
Yesterday, the Pentagon was briefing on it.
Okay.
So I haven't heard anything since then. So yeah, there's that happening as well. And of course, I bet you the budget's going to have some unexpected things in it.
Yes. Well, you say unexpected. I mean, let's face it, the newspapers for once have covered pretty much everything you could possibly cover, from, you know, the Brit ISA through to capital gains on inheritance, through to inheritance freezes, through to agricultural land now needing to pay inheritance tax, capital gains at different levels, national insurance increases for employers. I don't think there's anything that they've pension raids in order to build national infrastructure. I don't think there's been anything that they haven't covered that exists as a taxable item, or that they could be the things that you might discover that you wouldn't expect from Labour. And I've been saying for a while now, especially with the rise of machine learning, is that you may hear that although they're protecting public sector pensions, they are going to be severely reducing the civil service.
Yeah, if I don't know why, but I don't see Labour doing that.
Well, and you wouldn't normally, but is this Labour? Are the Tories Tory anymore? It seems to me there's very little distinction.
That's a good point. I see this government, which I don't think is a Labour government in the true sense of the word. I see this government as a government that wants bigger government.
Yes, I agree, but they're going to try and do, hey, private firms have been cost cutting ever since about 2007 in order to get efficiencies from smaller staff numbers. I think you'll find that with the use of technology, we will be able to reduce the overhead in the civil service. I mean, take the land registry, for instance. Sure, you need humans to look at the microfiche and sort that out. But in terms of actually the transactions and updates, one of the reasons those people are so apathetic about digitization is because, hey, my job's going to disappear. Because the conveyancers and the estate agents and everyone else involved in the chain actually fills in the details. All the land registry is doing is then plugging it into their system. Well, you don't need humans to do that.
No. So anyway, well,
it's not a happy thing, is it?
I mean, so now let's combine this in with the fact that the classic car market has collapsed.
Yep.
And more than 50% of lots at auctions aren't selling at all. And the things that are selling with no reserve are going for astoundingly silly small money. Like really things that they're expecting to go for 50 grand are going for 15 grand.
Yeah. Well, and I think Rich could on us up on here. Doesn't he deal in Rolexes and
oh yes,
expensive handbags? And he says they're down
luxury items, watches, handbags. Look, everyone's selling, no one's buying in all of the luxury non-essential stuff, which classic cars are. If a classic car is an appreciating asset, it's one thing to keep on spending money on it. But when your classic car's value is going through the floor and it's costing you an arm and leg to try and keep the thing running, no one wants them anymore.
Oh, and we haven't discussed gold. It's doing okay.
Yes, gold and silver are both doing very well.
Well, silver lagging a bit, but gold certainly.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. It just, like I said, I don't know if you saw that post I put on X earlier. It feels very 1991.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you remember back in 2022, when we discussed this, people said, oh, is it going to be like 2008? And we said, no, actually, it's going to be much more like the late 80s, early 90s. And some people were like, well, it could be like the 70s with hyperinflation up to something. Well, I don't think so. But the 80s, 90s, late 80s, early 90s, especially, as I say, if Reeves doesn't enact tax changes for capital gains immediately, but waits 6 months or however long it is, 5 months, then you will see a massive disruption in the market, in the housing market.
Yeah, but there are definitely higher than usual layoffs in senior levels in the banking sector, and recruitment is down. I've seen recruiters commenting saying no one's hiring. I've seen IT contractors saying no one's hiring. Loads are out of work.
Oh, I looked at the job boards the other day. As you know, I do fractional work these days, and was having a look through. I hadn't realised that JobServe itself is sort of is demised. It is mostly a dead parrot. But then I looked at the other top job boards, and I used to find for program managers, program directors, senior project managers in the London area, ordinarily there would have been in the region of 300 to 500 roles listed at any given time. Right now, contract, there are 35. And the rates are the same as they were back in 2014.
And it's not going to get better anytime in the near future. That's the point, right?
Correct.
It's only going one way at the moment.
Well, not only that, of those roles, over half of them were inside IR35. So if employer national insurance contributions go up, those rates, which are 2014 rates, not inflated by the last few years, are even lower.
Yeah. So people's actual real disposable income / wealth / standard of living is still
sliding. Yeah, down the drain.
I think the next, the last 2 years we've seen it. 2022, it was still bubbling up. Everyone felt great. We were still on the rise of all the free COVID cash. Yada yada, fantastic. We then started calling out 2022. Everyone was like, "No, it's fine. You guys are doom-mongers. Everything's brilliant. It's going to be free money forever. We're all going to be rich and have big houses." And then it's been sliding gradually since then. The economy has sort of been flatlining, hasn't it? There's a tiny bit of technical recession and then a tiny bit of growth and struggle. But real GDP has been going down for 2 years until. But I think the next 2 years are going to be worse. And there's so many different things. There are so many different factors in play now on the global political level that weren't there 20 years ago.
Yep.
On the technology level, 20 years ago, smartphones hadn't even been conceived.
No.
When
was your first iPhone? Was what, 2008?
2007. I can remember because I got one. I can remember walking around. We had offices, I had an office in London, in Sydney, and in Sri Lanka. And I was in Sydney a lot. And I can remember walking around, and I had my Nokia phone in one hand and my Apple iPod with a video screen on it in the other hand. I remember thinking to myself, God, if someone puts those two things together, they're onto a winner.
Yes. And they have been. And Apple, if you'd invested in Apple back then, you would have done very, very, very well.
Don't tell it off. If I'd put £1,000 into Apple stock when I thought about it, I can remember where I was sitting at my desk at the office in Richmond thinking, Apple's going to go to the moon. It's just going to go. I should put some money in there, but I didn't have any spare money at the time, and I didn't. If I put £1,000 in there 22 years ago, do you know how much it'd be worth now?
Oh, a lot.
3 million.
Yeah. Well, hey, much more recently than that, a friend of mine seriously into. He's not a pilot, and he flies microlights occasionally, but he loves the Microsoft Flight Sim at home, and he's got all the controls, he's got everything set up. And we were discussing, what was the best graphics card and what could he do this? And we're going back probably 8 years. And I can't remember what model it was, but there was a new NVIDIA one out that the Bitcoiners were beginning to pick up on the GPU capabilities. And so the prices were beginning to go up on them. But at that point level, they were still very affordable. And I said, no, you should, NVIDIA, I've been hearing good things. And he's like, and he loved it. He phoned me and I said, oh, they're fantastic, brilliant card. And then more friends were saying, I thought, do you know what? If I had some cash now, NVIDIA would be a good. Did I buy any? What an arse.
What an arse. Yes, what an arse. Well, mate, listen, I've got in 15 minutes, I've got my Movers Club, my private Movers Club video conference. So I need a chance to get ready for that. But you and I will be. We have had a few more members signing up to the Charlie and Stig show, even though we've been discussing. We are currently in discussions about rethinking the charging structure or not. Maybe we will, and if we do that, we'll make sure we take care of the people who've already joined to make sure that they are seen right. But at the moment, this time next week, the budget will have just happened, and you and I will be together in my flat with a drink or three.
Oh, yes. And actually, I may not be on the wine next week.
Oh, really?
I'm so concerned about this budget, I might bring a decent bottle of whiskey for us.
Oh.
You make sure that there's some ice just in case it warms up too much.
I think we should keep going till we can't speak anymore, and only then click end stream.
Okay, I'll bring 2 bottles of whiskey.
So that should be fun. Yeah, we'll have to have a word and think about what we're going to do, because we do now have paying members.
Yep.
But I feel that because it's the budget special, we've got to find a way to let more people in on it. But we've also got to find a way to take care of the people who maybe there'll be a sort of an after party for the members or something. I don't know, something like that.
Oh, well, in which case we'll have to stay a little more sober than I was hoping. But yeah,
or
okay.
maybe before, maybe we can start. Maybe we go beforehand, members only, and then open it up. I don't know. We'll have a think. Maybe some people give us some ideas. Put some comments below what you think we should do, how we could do it.
Patricia, don't worry. I'll buy the whiskey before she announces.
Before she announces the tax and alcohol. Right? Yeah, it's 1 week's time, Rich. It is 1 week until the budget. Everybody, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for joining this evening. Every Wednesday, 8 o'clock, I'll be here having the movers workshop. Remember, if you need anything, find it on my website, mhwc.co.uk/conveyancing. Get your free newsletter every Friday. Sign up there. Otherwise, everyone have a wonderful Wednesday night. If you are a member of the Private Movers Club, I will see you in less than 15 minutes in the link that you got in the email I sent you today in the video conference room. And to the rest of you, have a very good night, and we'll see you on the next video.